What's going on, guys? I'm Zach from the Lumios Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we'll be talking about regional variants, and specifically if we'll be seeing more regional variants in the future of, the Pokemon franchise, because there's actually a really good discussion around this, and if regional variants are feasible going forward. Well, let's start with what prompted this discussion. So, regional variants were first introduced in Generation 7, the Alola region. We had Alolan forms. We had a good bit of them. They were limited to Gen 1 Pokemon only. Then in Gen 8 and Sword and Shield, we got more regional variants. And this time, they were obviously Galarian forms, and they branched out past Gen 1. We also saw expansion on these variants where now there was something called regional evolutions for things like how Farfetch'd is a Pokemon that can't evolve, but Galarian Farfetch'd's Galarian form can evolve further. It can become Surfetch'd. So they expanded upon it a little more there. Then we had Legends Arceus, another Gen 8 game, and we had plenty of Hisuian forms there too, as well as some Hisuian evolutions, such as Sneasler. And then lastly, we had Scarlet and Violet, the games that just released for us all, and there are two variants in them. There's Paldean Wooper, who does have a regional evolution in Clodsire, and there's Paldean Tauros. They did technically give us 3 of the Paldean Tauros, but still, it's very unusual, that there's only 2 of these. And now, this is interesting because it's prompted this discussion of, are they ending regional variants? Now, there's kind of a case to be made both ways. Some people say the reason that there are so few regional variants in this game is because they kind of gave us things that are similar in concept to regional variants, but also different. So, first you have the convergent Pokemon, which are like Pokemon's take on convergent evolution. It's things like Wiglet and Toedscool. And then you have the Paradox Pokemon, which are, very, very different. They've got higher stats. They, are monostage. So, like, Volcarona's Paradox is only Volcarona's Paradox. There is no pre-evolution to it. Screamtail, which is Jigglypuff's Paradox, cannot evolve into a Wigglytuff Paradox. So it's very different, but it's still that base concept of taking an original Pokemon design and building off of it, right? So maybe that's why there weren't many regional variants, is because they were expanding kind of what they're doing with base Pokemon designs, and instead giving us convergence to and paradoxes, which paradoxes would be more like Ultra Beasts in this case, where this will probably be the last we see of them for a while, because they're very much tied to Scarlet and Violet's story. We probably won't get new Paradox Pokemon in Gen 10, right? We probably wouldn't get new Paradox Pokemon until, honestly, Scarlet and Violet remakes and 2097. But all that's to say that they might be steering away from regional variants. They might be introducing these new concepts to see if maybe we like them and can latch on board. And you may be thinking, why would they do that? Well, it actually makes a ton of sense when you really think about it from a development standpoint. So regional variants are super easy to make for them because, they just take a base Pokemon design and build off of it. You just take Vulpix and say, what if it was, instead of a regular old fox, it was an Arctic fox, and you make it so. But this kind of hurts you in the long run, because right now, the concept of regional variants that first came in Sun and Moon, so that was 2016. So regional variants, that concept is only 6 years old. And there are 4 different types of variants: Galarian, Alolan, Paldean, and Hisuian. However, the issue is, let's fast forward 10 years. In the next 10 years, there will be 3 different generations, because generations typically last 3 years. So let's assume there are 3 generations, and let's assume that of those 3 generations, there's just one Legends game. That's still 4 more forms, because you have the Gen 9 regional or Gen 10 regional variants, the Gen 11 regional variants, the Gen 12 regional variants, and then the Legends Johto regional variants, plus the 4 we already have. And the issue is, it just becomes hard for players to get access to those. You know what I mean? I mean, think about Pokemon that maybe you love to death, but is hard to get a hold of. I think a great example is Sewaddle. I love Leavanny, and it has never been in a Pokedex outside of Univas. So currently, if I want a Leavanny, I have to either play Black 2, or White 2, or I have to play Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire and like do the whole post game getting the PokeNav to expand where I can find Pokemon from outside of the region, or I can go to Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon and use the island scam. Well, the issue is, in 10 years, it might be hard for you to access those games. I know for me personally, I have 2 copies of Pokemon White, and both of them have the blue screen of death, which means that they are unplayable now. Thankfully, I do have a Black 2, and I do have a Pokemon Omega Ruby and an Alpha Sapphire, and I have a Pokemon Ultra Sun. In fact, I have 2 copies between me and my wife. So, sure, I can access Leavanny right now, but in 10 years, I can't. Well, that becomes even harder with regional variants, because they are typically, in large, tied to one region, right? I cannot find a wild Galarian Meowth in Scarlet and Violet. I can get one by trade, but that's only true for Galarian Meowth. I can't for Alolan Grimer. I can't for Cantonian Tauros. So the issue is that these forms will be harder to get a hold of as time goes on, because in 10 years, Alolan forms will be 16 years old. So it's going to be hard to get access to a 16-year-old game to get all your favorite Alolan forms off of there. Or it's going to be hard to, in 10 years, Legends Arceus will be 11 years old. It'll be harder to get access to that and the Hisuian forms there, which they probably won't include in modern Pokemon games because, they're supposed to be these ancient forms, so it's kind of hard to explain why an NPC has a Pokemon that's supposed to be long extinct, right? You see what I'm illustrating here? It's just something that will be hard to keep alive, these regional forms. So I think things like Wiglet and Toedscool, where they are in a similar concept to regional variants, they are a little bit different because they're a whole different species. It's not, mole to mole, it's mole to eel. But they are that basic thing of taking a design and building off of it. An original, like an old design, and building off of it. So that's a lot easier because you give them their own deck slot. You don't make them a regional form. So Wiglet could be found in the Gen 10 region. It could be found in the Gen 15 region. Whereas Alolan Grimer is going to be tied to Alola. Hisuian Zorua is going to be tied to Hisui, which, again, that one is even harder to deal with because Hisui isn't just a region, it's a former region. It's now Sinnoh. You can't find Hisuian Zorua in Sinnoh, so it's even harder to access because it's both locked to land and time. But yeah, let me know what you think of this. Do you think that Pokemon could be steering away from regional variants for good? And how would that make you feel? I know some people actually don't like regional variants and think that they're lazy designs and a waste of data in the game. I am not in that camp. I love regional variants, and I'd be really sad to see them go, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts, so drop them in the comments below. Be sure to also like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss all our future Pokemon videos. I love these regional variants, and they've given us so much lore to dive into, and, well, if this is the end of it, we'll still find things to do with it, so like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Until next time, I will see all of you later.